Okay, we are live.
Good morning. Happy Sunday. If you are live with us, say hello. Let us know where you're watching us from. We know it is bright and early, so um at least it is in our time zone. It's 9 a.m. where we are. So some people may not be awake yet because they might have partied too hard last night. Or some of us are at church, but if you are live with us, please say hi. Let us know where you're watching us from and help us share as well.
I know, I think everybody's probably watching. If you're watching us from your bed, please let us
I
know.
know.
Totally okay with that.
Good that you look sa show that you know huh? I was like so tired. Yesterday we had a birthday for my hair is crazy for my son, and then we decided to just have like family over and barbecue. So it was kind of like unexpected, and so we were busy all day yesterday. Hi Tao, how are you?
It's Linda.
Oh, is it Linda?
Yeah.
Ayo, si Hi Linda.
Oh, I
Oh
bet
my
it's
god.
warm in
Yes.
your bed. It's like super. It is chilly this morning, y'all. I don't even know what.
Mhm.
It's 38 and it is gray here, and so it's kind of really honestly perfect weather to
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
we are totally okay if you are in bed, comfortable, warm. This conversation today is really supposed to be kind of that big hug for all of us. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so obviously, I think there's just been a lot happening in our lives, and we just wanted to kind of come on and talk about those changes and really reflect back to overall just our lives in general. Yeah, like there's big milestones that we hit in our lives or big changes that we hit in our lives, and just kind of talking about how and sharing our experiences on how we navigated those change, and where we are today, what changes are happening in our future, and how we plan to kind of tackle those. I think sometimes um Olihai, like if you've never dealt with it before, it's so hard to kind of just figure it out. But I think if our conversation today, if there are things that you want to take away to help you navigate change, that's kind of what we're hoping for to you, is just sharing our experiences so then we all can learn and grow from that. So I'm looking forward
yeah.
to it, Callie.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, like, you know how sometimes people just be like, just get over it and just go on, but
Yeah.
I feel like change is like very almost like traumatizing, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
new thing and then things start to like be different. You have to like do new things, think about new things, and it's really difficult. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit of the changes that we've all had to dealt with. Like sometimes
Yeah.
we feel like we just need to toughen up and get on because nobody cares, but it's just like being that new person or that dealing with that new thing, it can be it can really impact us, I think, all mentally, and especially I think what we saw with COVID too. And I mean, that was a big life transition that a lot of us don't really we know we I haven't really stopped to think about just how much that has impacted me.
Yeah. So let's kind of think back. I want to go back even further because I know just from our conversations, like we have transitioned from like moving state, right? We were both in California, and our ages were probably very similar when we moved. And I moved to Oregon, and your family moved to North Carolina. So how did you, even as a child, we have to deal with change all the time, right? And I think it's just we don't know enough about it in order to like strategize and plan and figure things out. But even as a child, how did you handle that move?
This is so funny because I remember, tell you and Maya, you just feel like you're never going to see people again, right? I mean, it felt like that, right? And it's probably how our parents felt when they left, like, like Paul and Taipei and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Of just, like the songs about never seeing each other again and that type of thing. I remember I moved to North Carolina after fourth grade, and I remember being in the car and like I was like putting my head back, but I had like tears coming down my face, and my brother was making fun of me. But I literally felt like I'm never gonna see these people, like all my friends again,
Yeah.
which is actually mainly true because I haven't seen them. Like I haven't, I haven't like like connected with them.
Yeah.
And I just remember knowing that like a part of our life is ending and that we're going to this new place. And in California we lived in an apartment with a lot of other Hmong people, and like
Mhm.
there was just a lot of people that looked like you. And not that that was like a conscious thought of knowing that I was going to North Carolina, but North Carolina, like it wasn't like that with a lot of, like the apartments were just different and people live further away, and so you just feel like, yeah, like it was just completely different. And then we stayed with my aunt and uncle in their house for a little bit. Like, there's like 8 kids of us, right? And their little house. And I remember, like, I think like maybe two kids, and so
Mhm.
I just remember feeling like, wow, like how lucky those kids were to like not have to share ever. Like they had like a
Mhm.
American family, right? Of like
Yeah.
maids,
Yeah.
but it was very yeah, like finding our footing and being a new place and not being able to see your friends every day, go outside and play with them was very difficult.
Yeah. How was your approach to, like, making new friends there, right? Knowing you, like, left all of your friends behind, how did you deal with that, and was it easy for you to make friends?
I always felt like I was a shy kid, but I was a pretty, yeah, I mean, I felt like I was a shy kid, but remember that story, when I was telling you about my friend that said what she remembered about me,
Oh,
about my
Megan.
laugh and all that
Uh-huh.
stuff, and just
Yeah.
saying that I was, a little bit more outgoing than how I remember myself. But I think it just, yeah, I mean, I was super nerdy. And I think at that age too, like in fifth grade, I was in Longview. And so I was a pretty nerdy kid, but I felt like at that time, like we were also kind of nerdy, right? Like reading and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that was not crazy difficult. But, I also had a lot of siblings. And I think that helps to feeling like even though you don't have a ton of like friends outside of that, you have a lot of siblings that you can still play with. So I think that
Yeah.
helped.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like, when we moved up, I do remember crying as well because, we were all still very young, but I also remembered, like, I think, my when I first started there, I think one of my teachers, like, she knew that, you yin and your friends and stuff. So I remembered she asked me to write a letter to my teacher, and she mailed it to him. And then my teacher had all of my old classmates write me a letter, and
Oh,
then he sent
wow.
it. Yeah, he sent it to my teacher, and she gave it to me, and I remember reading it. I was just I was even more sad,
Yeah.
because they're all like, "Oh, we miss you," and things like that. And so I just always thought that was so kind of my teacher to,
No.
like, help me move on in a sense where I got to say goodbye because I
Yeah.
didn't get to say goodbye. My parents, they just
Mhm.
kinda like, "Oh, 個字都當乜嘢, we're just gonna go. 認真得嘅，呢拜，少男," right? They just don't
Mhm.
hi bye to, like, any of my friends, that don't live in the same apartment complex as me, right? And
Mhm.
my teachers. And so
Mhm.
I thought that was so absolutely sweet of her. She's
Yeah.
always been this, like, kind teacher, and I just thought that was so sweet. But yeah, I think even for me coming up here, we came from a town with tons of Asian people to a town with very little. And so I think for me, I just connected naturally to um Asian folks here,
Mhm.
right? And so I became good friends with, I think we just naturally connect with each other actually. It's not even just like a one-way thing, right? They're the first ones to say, "Hey, you're new to the school." And
Mhm.
to, like, sit down with you and, like, make you feel welcome. So I think
Mhm.
naturally I just kind of latched onto that, and so became really good friends with one of my good friends now. We don't talk anymore. I think we just kind of outgrow each other and our phases in our lives. But every time we get back together or have lunch, I feel like we're always right back to where we were because we know so much about each other's family growing up. Um, and so yeah, I think for me, friendship was pretty easy. I was an extroverted kid, even though I didn't think I was. But I wasn't really shy. I talked to everybody. And so it was naturally just really easy for me to befriend folks. But I think just moving, it was so traumatizing for me
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're like leaving a whole life of fun. That's how I
Mhm.
saw it, right? Like
Yeah.
every day, 我洗衫的人天涯
Yeah.
人迹, right? There's a whole bunch of fun things with like all the kids in the apartment complex. And I just, I just loved it so much. And I'm so happy that I grew up in that type of like,
Yeah.
and having that type of memory, childhood memory. So
Yeah. So how old were you when y'all moved up here?
I was in the 5th grade, so whatever age that
Okay.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So old enough to like know shit's happening,
Yeah.
but young enough to still be like, "Mommy, I'm sad and I kinda need your love,"
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know? But yeah, it was easier. I mean, I have lots of great memories with folks, but, and I've been able to find actually a lot of my friends on Facebook, which has
Yeah.
been amazing. We've connected and we stay in touch, and it's nice. I love social media because it allows me to see how people are doing. There's only one friend that I'm still searching for, and because
Mhm.
I don't know what she looks like, I don't remember.
Mhm.
So I can't just like type in my vein
Yeah.
and say,
There's a
"Show me my
gazillion.
vein," And so I'm
Yeah.
like, "Which my vein are you?" I remember she and I
Yeah.
had a class together, and she, she's so different. She's very like extroverted too, but
Mhm.
I just can't recall like what she looked like or imagine, like one of those face changes where it's like, oh, they were 8 years old and now they're like 30. What could they possibly look like? So I'm still kind of looking for her, just searching through the other friends that I've connected with their Facebook page, but I don't know if
Mhm.
she's moved, since I've moved. I have no idea. So hopefully one day I'll find her, but
Yeah.
she's the only friend that I could not find, but
Mhm.
everyone else I have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it definitely was like a privilege to grow up with a lot of kids, and you can just get out and be
Mhm.
outside and play with a lot of kids. And then because moving to North Carolina was definitely you couldn't just do that anymore. Like Jay, like are far from each other. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
land, and so it's not like you can just go and play. But thankfully, having a big family really helped. Just there's
Yeah.
always someone to play with. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed. Okay, so how about like going to college? What was that like for you? And how did things change and how did you navigate all of that? Because I know
Yeah,
you you like
oh god.
left the nest.
Yes, and I feel like sometimes I make big changes,
Yeah.
and I don't really think about what's gonna happen until, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, that was kinda crazy." Um, because I moved my, uh like, after my junior years, I went my senior year in high school, in Georgia just because I could get my residency and then get the Hope Scholarship, which basically pays for your college. So that was like my primary thing. Hi, Ruby. But I didn't really think about like the effects of all of that on my life, right? I really
Mhm.
just saw something and then I was just like, I'm going. Like
Yeah.
and I think it was hard because I don't remember really calling my brother. My brother Blair was the first brother to go to college away, even though it was still in state. And so, I think him going was good. But then, when I went, it was very different too because I mean, Georgia was such a much bigger state where we lived. I went to Georgia State University, which was in downtown Atlanta. And so, I had to drive on like 6-lane highways. Like it was
Oh
scary,
my God.
like
Yeah.
going from like this small town, like where I got my driver's license, they don't even test you on like parallel parking. Like that's how small we were. And so
Yeah.
then when I went, and I remember driving and forgetting the exit where my aunt lived at and missing the exit. And like I literally like spent like I felt like an hour driving back and forth because I was like, oh, lalu J call exit na look go, their house. And so that was very different, but I love like the diversity. I knew that because like Georgia State is a very international school, and so there was a lot of Asian people. So that felt really nice. And then, I think other minorities too, even from other countries, I think that made me feel very like it's okay to be different, because everybody else is different as well, right? Everyone else is like kind of navigating what that life is. And so I think really just help like establishing a routine. And I think college kind of does do that. And I'm a very structured person. And so I think it was like once I got my class and I figure out when I was going to go work out, and then I had a job as well. And so all of those kind of helped me to navigate that. But I mean, I love school. I love college. I love like that academic environment. So I felt like that was, that wasn't, it was a lot of fun, and being able to like just hear other people and their thoughts and ideas and stuff in college was really nice. How about you?
Well, I think college for me was really, really different. And maybe it may resonate with a lot of people, but my dad passed away when I was small, and so then my mom remarried, and I feel like niluningning always sonye tushina, so um she got really sick and couldn't really like muote or orja anymore, and so I felt like I had to really like step in to help in a sense. So I actually stayed in town. So I went to community college and I was working 2 jobs, but I still found time to like connect with people and hang out and do all the things that you're supposed to do when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, like underage drinking and, fun things with your friends, right? Like hang out, go do fun things. I still had time to do all of that with the 2 jobs. And then, eventually I dropped out because I was offered a full-time job being a manager at a retail store, and it's just like at the time I was like, man, I got it way better than most of my friends, right? Like I have a management job, um and pay was so small back then. Like I think I was only getting paid like $18 an hour, but I was like, that's more than some what my
Yeah.
friends were making. They were only making like 11, 12, if not even in the double digits. So I was like, yeah, I'm making bank. um but it's like nothing compared to now. It's like 18 is like minimum wage
Yeah.
now in the States, right? So, I think back then it was like, okay, this was good. I can work full time. I can help my mom pay for her bills, and essentially that's what I did. I took care of my family while she was recovering, and I just never went back,
Mhm.
until I got married, and then I had always wanted to go back, but I think just timing and motivation, like no
Mhm.
purpose, right? It's like
Mhm.
I can find good paying jobs with my 2 years, but no degree at all whatsoever, right? And so I was doing okay, but I decided like after I had my son, I decided to go back for me and not for any job of just like, I started this and I think it's important. And I do want to go back and get a degree, but it had to be something meaningful. Like, I don't want to just go back to just have something. It has to be something that I'm passionate about. So it took like 1 or 2 years for me to kind of figure that out of what is important to me. Right. And
Mhm.
I think kind of going back to the drawing board of my mom was the reason why I stopped going to school because of her health. So, I think just my whole life being a translator for her, picking up her medication, understanding the healthcare system, and being an advocate for underserved communities and underrepresented communities was a big thing for me because of my mom. So, I went back for my undergrad for healthcare administration. I couldn't be a doctor. I just
Mhm.
couldn't. I know that's what she wanted. I just couldn't do it
Yeah.
because กูปอที่หนึ่งตัวสิกูตัวที่เชีย so like กูปอ
Yeah.
กูปอช้าสิกูตัวที่เชียกูปอ
Yeah.
เลยนงสิเรากูกิลิเตีย so I can't do it. I told that to my mom. I was like, I can't do that, mom. Like, I can't even like if it's like my child, I don't know. I feel like I could have changed. Yeah, I can change my kids' diapers, but
Yeah.
like when they vomit, New has to take care of them. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I just can't. Um, and so, I think for me, it's more of just my experience of going to school and change is finding your purpose and why you're going. Because when I went, and I feel like that's kind of like how a lot of kids nowadays, like, "Laging chipo, hindi lo pa wa chili," and, I always assure my nieces and nephews, like, you don't have to know what you wanna do right
Mhm.
away. Most people don't, even till today. Like, they're in the 30s, 40s, they still don't know what they wanna do,
Mhm.
but that's part of life, and that's part of you growing, and, it's okay if you don't know what you wanna do, and I feel like for me, because I continuously tell myself that, I gave myself permission to, like, be okay with dropping out,
Mhm.
be okay with going to a community college because
Mhm.
I wasn't privileged to leave, and, just focus on my school. I had my mom to think about, I had my little sister and brother to think about, I just couldn't, like, leave. I mean, I would feel awful. I don't even know how their life would have turned out if I left for school, and,
Yeah.
so I think just, like, looking at your situation, and sometimes we feel like we have to put our goals aside or on hold in order to, um, kind of accomplish what we need to for our family or for other people. And I think that's okay. You just have to
Mhm.
have a backup plan. Make sure that if you set your mind to something, you will accomplish it. It's really just in regards to timing. So I
Mhm.
think for me, it's different in that sense where I didn't finish school right away. I went back many, many years later, um, and got my undergrad and then continued on and got my master's. So I think it's just how bad do you want it and your reason why. Because I went back to not just have a degree, I went back to for me, just
Yeah.
because I wanted it. And whether I found a good job with that or not, I'm okay with it because I knew I got good jobs without the degree, but if the
Right.
degree helps me and getting better jobs, then that's great. But I was happy where I was, and I was just like, I'll just grow within the company. I work really hard. I'm a good worker. I like talking to people. Um, I'm all about growth and I stick to that. So I didn't fear making money, but I really just went for me. So,
Yeah. So maybe you can talk about, because like, um uh because I think you already had one of your kids when you
mhm,
went back, right? Is that what you said? And so
yeah,
maybe we can talk about that transition of just like, okay, like now you have kids, now it's like, okay, but I still want to go back. And
mhm.
then, but now, it's not the same as like, right, you can stay up late
Yeah.
all night and do
Yep.
your paper and then like wake up late the next day. It's like the next day, the little kids are gonna wake up too. And so maybe you
Mhm.
can talk about just that transition and how they're
Yeah.
gonna feel.
So my oldest, so I had my child and then I decided to go back to school and then I was pregnant again with my second. So you guys, this is a whole process of me
Yeah.
just like these are at some point I'm almost like does the universe not want me to go to school? Because I had my first one and I decided to go and I think I finished like um the first year. It's like a year and a half program because I had already gone to community college. So I enrolled in a Christian based university, George Fox University. And so they have like adult degree programs, which is very different, right? Because it's from 6 to 10, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whichever works for your schedule. And you're in class for like 4 hours. But the really cool thing is that you're with the same cohort the entire duration of your program. So I got to be, in the same class every single night with the exact same people for 2.5 years if you stuck out to that program. So that was really cool. Um, and so I went for a year. I got pregnant with the second one, and then I had Bell's palsy. It was one of the most crazy things I've ever experienced in my life, where like the left side of my face was just like gone. It wasn't a stroke. I was pregnant, and the baby sat on a nerve, and it just completely took out my left face. And it was kind of scary. I went into work. Didn't think anything. I felt my face a little tingly the night before driving home from school, and then the next day I went to work, and one of my coworkers, I started a new job there, and we were still in training, and one of my new coworkers waited for me at the door, and I didn't realize anything different about my face, and she's like, I said, "Hi, good morning." And she's like, "What the fuck is wrong with your face?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Olivia, I think you have a stroke. Like, go look in the mirror, like your face." And I went into the bathroom and I looked at my face, and even at that moment in time, I was like, "It's okay. I'll go after work."
Yeah.
You know, because I have so much to worry about that I'm just like,
Mm.
"Galia, it's okay. It's probably nothing, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, right?"
Yeah.
And so then she's like, "No, like you really need to go. Like I think you know, because you know, so
Mhm.
um they're just like she's like, "No, you need to go." And then I don't know what happened. I went to go sit down at my manager's desk and I just like broke down and I cried because I'm like, I don't know what's happening to me.
Mhm.
And so she's just like, "You know what? It's okay. Just go to the doctors, go to the emergency room, get yourself checked out." And then of course when I went, they did all the testing that they did for having a heart attack and or stroke, and it wasn't, you know, because I was still able to like stick up my tongue and do all sorts of stuff, and there was no movement in my arms and stuff, so it was just my face. And
Mhm.
so um they're like, "Yeah, we can't do any sort of scans either because you're pregnant. We can't give you any medication either because you're pregnant." So it could, you know, it could be that the baby sat on a nerve. It could be that there's just so much stress in your life right now with you being pregnant that it took out half of your face.
Mm.
So even at that, I did not feel stress, you know, and so I don't know. So then I went to school and I just decided, Galia, maybe it's not the right timing for me. So I
Mhm.
dropped out of school again for the second time.
Mhm.
And then after I had him, it was going to be a whole year, and I think like after a certain amount of time your credit starts to expire if you don't fully do the whole program. And so then it was like a year and a half later, and I was like, "Oh, I just need to freaking do it. Like I just need to go back because I still want to get my degree. I still want to grow within the healthcare organization and become a, you know, an executive or a leader, so I can make a change and policies and stuff like that in order to kind of close the gap in the disparities of healthcare for underserved and underrepresented communities." And so I went back to school and finally graduated, and I
Mhm.
was so proud of myself. But you know, it took a lot of reality checks with the husband too, right? Like New and I had to have a lot of conversation, and I love how supportive my in-laws are. I'm so blessed that I grew up in a really, you know, I grew up in a really hard family to be around because of, you know, our experience with like Nihon and all that stuff. But I think that the universe really blessed me with having really great in-laws about just supporting an education, supporting you luning zhongli luna, right? So they help me, you know, my in-laws and my husband, they always help me watch my kids so I don't have to stress about cooking dinner. They always make sure that there's a warm meal for me when I come home from school. And so I think they knew how badly I wanted to get my degree, and they supported me in whatever way possible. My father-in-law is so sweet. He even offered to pay for my education. I said, "Oh my gosh, I cannot ask him to do
Mhm.
that. Like that is just too much. I can't, you
Yeah.
know." Um, and I know that they mean well, but I just as a person, I just can't ask for that. I'd rather have them save that for their retirement, you know?
Mhm.
I'll just figure it out myself. And so you know, I think talking a lot with New on schedule was important.
Mhm.
Um, really making sure that he knows like I have a 10-page paper due in the next 2 days. So I'm gonna need you to watch the kids and so I can concentrate. And so I would be like sitting at the kitchen table. Thank goodness that I was so good at writing BSing 10-page papers that I can crank it out in one night and still get a
Yeah.
day. Otherwise, I would be struggling so hard, right? And so George Fox is a university, at least for the adult degree program, that doesn't believe in homework and tests. They believe in you writing and showing that you absorbed what they've talked about and try to apply it in real life kind of thing.
Mhm.
Really make you think about examples that you can share that could potentially reflect that ability or skill that they've taught you. So it was a
Mhm.
lot of writing, right? Every
Mhm.
day, every week, it's like a 10-page paper due. And so, you know, it was really amazing to do that. And I loved that there was no tests because
Yeah.
I'm not a great test taker,
Mhm.
but I can articulate well in regards to what I've learned. And
Mhm.
so um I love that about that university. But yeah, I mean, it took a lot of communication and just believing in yourself. And it's much harder with kids, but I'm just really thankful I have a great husband and good in-laws to really help me navigate through that. That was really amazing. And then, of course, then New decided to go to school as well. So
Yeah.
now we're both in school. And
Yeah.
so it's almost like, thank goodness for our parents, where like
Yeah.
ba ư thiên lý, cỡ tiền nào, right?
Yeah.
Because he decided to go. So now at Tonda, we were like, God, maybe like in 27, still trying to figure life out.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm still trying to figure life out now, but we like Junior, so we had like one laptop. And
Yeah.
so it's like, I'm gonna use the laptop for this class, and then I'll meet you in the hallway and I'll give you the laptop for your class because in this
Yeah.
class I may not need it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, Tondo, like we'll just buy you one to prep you for school. We thought about that like halfway in,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just trying to navigate all of that too and our schedule. So there's moments where our parents would like watch our kids so we both can do homework.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it takes a village after having kids to
Yeah.
really go back because you're really asking for people to help you and it's really hard,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
after that, it's really, okay, I wanna go back for my master's now, so what do we do?
Mhm.
You graduated, so now we're back to the first plan. You watch the kids while I just do
Yeah.
everything else, right? So,
Yeah.
um, you got you more if you don't have a plan or if you're not passionate about your education, especially after it's you're not
Yeah.
gonna I mean, I feel like that's with anything, but,
Yeah.
um, it's much harder after kids,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I loved how you kinda talked about, new and, like, your in-laws and stuff because as we're going through, like, life transitions, like, the people around us are also impacted, right? Just like
Mhm.
like, our like, people in our lives go through their own changes, it does directly impact us or it makes us, like, so like when my brother got married,
Mhm.
which I was very, very happy for, but I was also really, really sad because I knew that, it's different now, and
Yeah.
so it's definitely one of those things where we're constantly going through our life changes, but the people around us are also shifting too, and so we're having to adapt and evolve to that. And those have their own like just like difficulties and impacts on us mentally.
Yeah.
So let's talk about getting married. So,
Yeah.
that's a big, I mean, that, like college and then, getting married, those are big steps in our lives. So maybe you can talk about just, yeah, how that transition was to be to, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. So, like, to me, I feel like for me personally, my yacht journey didn't start till I moved back home, uh, in 2011 because my husband was in the service, and so, he was getting restationed in Camp Pendleton, and he's been gone for, like, years and years and years overseas. He did 2 tours and, was overseas for most of the first 4 years that he was in the Marine Corps, and so I didn't get to see him much, we didn't get to spend much time together, but, man, communication was so important. We wrote each other every day because that was before uh, all the social media and stuff that we have now. And when he moved back, um, I knew he was going to propose and we were going to get married. But of course, so I don't have that relationship with my mom. And so I've worked so hard to give her everything before I left. And that's why I didn't go back to school. I before I knew I was leaving, he and I had kind of already planned like he's gonna come home and he's gonna like take me home to get married, and I knew that was coming. And so before I left my home with my mom, like I bought her new furniture, I bought her new washer and dryer, I bought her things to where it worked in right. And so I did all of that knowing I was leaving, and then when I left, New and I went, we got married quickly. Um, and then we left to San Diego to be by
Mhm,
ourselves. And so now we're with each other every single day. So even though I wasn't a nya to my in-laws and my new family, I was now a wife to my husband, which is
mhm.
so different than when we were dating, right? Because tayo both tayo kusotong yung mo yung now, right?
Yeah.
And so now I remember there were times where we would have little arguments here and there, and I'm just like, I'm gonna go somewhere, but I have nowhere to go. I
Yeah.
can't go home. That's
Yeah.
a 15-hour drive home.
Yeah.
So I would like go to the gym to calm down, or go on a drive, or just go sit at the beach or something. Um, and so I feel like figuring out your partner and figuring out, even though our communication it was not, it's never been the problem, because I feel like long distance really enhanced our communications, with
Mhm,
each other.
mhm,
And so it wasn't the problem, but it was more of just like, I just need space, you
mhm,
know? I just need space to process. I need space to like just be with myself. Because yeah, all like I didn't have any friends down there either. So it's not like I can go to my friend's house and have a drink, or just hang out for a little bit. I have
mhm,
coworkers, but I don't feel comfortable sharing with them, my personal life and things that are going on internally within my marriage. So
mhm,
luckily a lot none of that stuff, right? So it was just moments where I'm just like, oh, I just need to like go somewhere.
mhm.
So it was hard to kind of navigate that at first, but once we kind of figured out that, we don't need to talk to each other this way, or that I get mad when he says this or does that, and he gets mad when I do, certain things. And so I think just figuring those moments out
Mhm,
um was um was challenging at first. And
mhm,
then when we moved home, it was very different, because it's kind of like now I have to actually build a relationship with my in-laws.
mhm.
Whereas yung nhỏ đây kể là hư tôi kể là chuyện thôi tại yung nhỏ lịch here, you know, like yes, and that's it,
Yeah.
right? Now it's like, God, I gotta conversate with them now. I gotta like help them where help is needed. I gotta wake up early, tell it one and stuff. And so it's just learning by examples too, which is
Mhm,
I thought was helpful for me,
mhm,
that my mom told a you do see, you watch, they teach you. So it's not like I was brand new to seeing what being a nya was like. I see it daily when I lived with my family. And so it wasn't hard for me to just kind of switch gears. But
mhm.
I think the hard part for me was just how to build relationship with people you've never lived with before,
Yeah.
because you're like leaving your mom, who knows how lazy you are, who
Mhm,
knows, whether you're bad at cooking, or what you don't guy, or whatever. Or like sometimes, you do like they know
mhm.
everything about you, to a
Yeah.
family where they know nothing about you, and you don't know what their expectations are of you. And so I think it's really trying to figure that out. But again, I was really lucky that my in-laws are just very traditional, but very modern at the same
Yeah.
time, where they understand that you yin hay tu ning a wo hao lü thia, you yin zhen geng li len geng thia. They don't expect you to
Yeah.
like wake up at 5 a.m. to cook everybody breakfast and pack everyone lunch. They themselves don't want to get up to do that for themselves. So I was
Yeah.
really fortunate and really lucky to where they're like, you can sleep till whatever time, they don't care. I
Yeah.
mean, they probably do secretly, I have no idea, but
Yeah.
at least I didn't felt like they projected anything onto me
Yeah.
where I feel like I have to be a certain way. I've
Yeah.
always felt like I can be myself with my in-laws. I can be opinionated and vocal about things I disagree with,
Mhm.
and they're okay with that. So I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
And New was really supportive in a sense where he didn't want me to be a certain way. He wanted me to just be myself, and
Mhm.
he loved me for me. And again, I was really fortunate to have found someone who can
Yeah.
be that for me, where model he just
Yeah.
doesn't care. He's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
you ready to get up? Let's get up, and
Yeah.
we'll go together.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think it's just that fear at first of just like, um, how will they like me, with all my flaws,
Mhm.
and will they accept me, and what are their expectations of me? And
Yeah,
I think that just comes with time.
yeah,
As you always have some sort of like fear or unknown that you don't know, and you
mhm.
just gotta wing it every day until you figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I know for you it's a little different because
yeah.
it's got and so
Yes.
how was that transition for you? It's going to be very different from my story, so I'm curious to hear
Yeah.
how that transition was for you.
Yeah, so, I mean, we got married pretty quickly, was, like, pretty shotgun, like, I always thought I would get married when I was 30, like, that had always been my plan, honestly, and then
Yeah.
but when I turned 19, I got married, so clearly, things did not, turn out the
Yeah.
way that I was thinking. And so, yeah, we got, and, I guess I had thought that I would marry someone who was Hmong, like, because I had my boyfriend in high school, and I think that would, if I had stayed in North Carolina, that's who I would marry. Like, but when MASH projected wrong, I don't.
Close enough. She 1930, so soon.
1930, I mean, I did.
Just a whole two career later.
That's right. And so, uh, it was hard because, I mean, I'm a girl, so you would think that what it's so small, but I of like seven other brothers,
Yeah.
right? And we had Nialona Yao. So it is a very traditional household, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think being like the second youngest kind of made me the way that I am, which is not very good at a lot of things. And so I think that when I got, married and realizing, wow, I have to like now learn how to communicate with somebody. I have to like run something by somebody.
Mhm.
I have to cook and because he was also Mika, like the way that he ate. I mean, he really liked Asian food, which really helped. um but like learning what it was like to cook for another person, things like that, it was definitely hard, and I was still finishing school. And so but I think us being away, because my parents were in North Carolina and his parents were in Washington State, and so we kind of like got that, I mean, we kind of grew up together,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
we grew up together and just figure stuff out together. And like you said, when your in-laws are far away, it's pretty superficial, that relationship, right?
Mhm.
And be there like their expectation, like I would say that their expectation are pretty low, right? Like, I mean, anything I do was like, like they're very thrilled about, right? And then they would
Yeah.
express that too, compared to like, like even my parents, like you what call you this sounds like hi good, like oh, okay.
It's like, almost about you she look almost your in-laws are probably like, "Wow, this rice tastes so good." But
Yes.
then, like, your mom parents would be like, "Yang tu king lo di chi mo lo gao su." I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think in a lot of ways, like I got just like, just the appreciate like a lot of the appreciation. So I'm kind of worried for my next marriage of like knowing that like dang, like no one's gonna be like I made pho for my ex-in-laws and they loved it.
Okay, now you get I have not had your foot ever. So
I'd rather have
so
your pho. No, let's not even.
so I think one of these days you're gonna have to,
I don't
make some
want
pho
to.
for me.
But it was just like, but so I think learning to be a nya to like Mika people are it is a lot different because
Different,
of
yeah.
just the way that, and I think that the way that they are as well, right? Because Brandon was the oldest, and so it's not like they had other like nyas to compare to, right? So I think they were
Yeah,
just appreciative of like the things I was able to do for them.
yeah,
But yeah, I think marriage is just it's hard, and
yeah,
it's just like
yeah,
learning another person, and you can't just quit, and yeah,
yeah.
it's hard.
I think I think all of our experiences are gonna be very different, but I would say that the one advice I can give anyone out there for this transitioning into this phase of your life is just really be open to learning about your spouse, because I think when you're dating, it's so có duyên頭跟丁mà I feel like có duyên包lại từ chứ bự trong đi chả thì có duyên bao lại cho đi chả a little bit. Um, but man, when you live with each other, it's so different because you're like breathing the same air 24/7 when you're not at work, And so I think learning how to love them literally for all of their flaws and all, and how do you deal with all of that, it's gonna really make or break your relationship. So I think just really taking the time to like know your partner and have patience, for sure. At least that worked for me, of just like taking time for myself and not calling it quits just because it gets hard,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
即係要個前後輪咗到嘢 there are times where I felt like, "Fuck, I just wanna go live back with my mom. I could be
Mhm.
lazy, I could do whatever, I don't have to care, right? Just be me."
Mhm.
But I didn't because, I know that he's who I want to be with, and this is just a little hiccup, and I just gotta figure it out,
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
think just being patient with your spouse and yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like a partner is like the closest person, which is also really, I think, really scary to like let somebody in that far because
Yeah.
everything that they do, like, it does impact you, right? But it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. Like I feel like with my kids, it's like I care a lot about them, but I know that one day their bond with their partner is gonna be the strongest because like, like it's
I
just
know.
right because like you all learning together and then like if they like are a spender that really affects you if they do drugs that like you're the person that care I
Everything.
feel like you care the most because like that directly impacts how your future and how your kids and everything and so I
Mhm.
just feel like it is marriage is a very hard transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then how about transition in regards to how nearly to your first job? What was that like for you, and what are some of the things that you've done to kind of help with that transition of just getting
Yeah.
a first job?
So I'll talk about like the first job after college, because I did work. I think, I started working
There's
when
a
I was
difference.
15th.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so, but I was very eager to work just because you knew that your parents like let you win, yeah, right? And so it's
Yes.
just like nice to be able to get that job. But after I think during college, um, I just felt like they just pump you with so much about how you're going to change the world and like how all this stuff, and then you get to your first job and you're sitting behind a desk doing spreadsheets and you're just like, oh my gosh, like this wasn't how I was imagining, life after college. But then, you do have to do the grunt work to like, you know,
Yeah.
continue to progress. But that wasn't how I was sold the idea of my first career, right?
Mhm.
I guess I was thinking I was gonna have the corner office and not like the cubicle, but it was definitely, and especially like I was in public accounting where I felt like a lot of people were ahead of me already, like culturally, like so I was joking with somebody about how remember when they asked you how you want your eggs and you said cooked, or they asked you how you want your steak and you're like cooked,
Yeah.
and now we're all like, oh, I want a rare, I want a medium or sunny side up, or but when I first started my job and we would have to go have lunch and stuff like that, it was very intimidating because you just felt like people already knew stuff that you mừng bươi này ạ, you mừng bươi, you don't know nothing that you chỉ
Yeah.
bóc
Yeah.
chi. You don't know to use the forks inside out or outside in, or why, how to butter the bread. Like, should I like grab first or what should I do?
Yeah.
And how do I even drink wine?
Yeah.
I think a lot of those things were hard as I felt like I was growing up and trying to figure out and being molded by, like my profession as well, but still trying to be who I was and how I grew up and stuff like that. Um, and then, the waking up every single day and then at the end of the day realizing that, oh my gosh, like this is so boring. Like working is so boring at that age, you know. Your work was
Yeah.
so like at the lowest level,
Yep.
and you didn't feel like you had a big impact. And so learning to just become this like quote unquote professional person, but also you know, and but then, you know, I think that was the first job, right? That I made the most money. And it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm rich, you know. I mean, I want
Mhm.
you know, it definitely
Mhm.
felt like it was just, oh, I've got my, you know, big girl job, and you know, I'm a staff now, and I get, you know, my own laptop, and you know, just things like that. And so I think that having that career that was different from my parents' career, so feeling some sort of pride with that, but also knowing that, oh my gosh, now I'm like, you know, the lowest man on the totem pole. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually had, so I'll talk a little bit about my first job. Um so like I was saying earlier, there's a difference in your first job when you're like 15, 16 versus like your actual first real job. So for me, my first ever job was making I was working for my niece and my nephew-in-law Lulu pizza shop.
Hmm.
So I was a pizza maker, and I
Hmm.
took that job so damn seriously. um you know, I would go there after school, I would go there on the weekends, and they would give me $200 a week, you know, which is not a lot. It's
Hmm.
a lot for a 14-year-old. I
Yeah.
Because I was 14, I was
Yeah.
a freshman. um, and so even at that age, it's like I give my mom, you know, 160 and I keep 40 for myself. And I've
Hmm.
always done that with my
Hmm.
paychecks, right? And then we moved to the city and I got my first real job where I worked at a retirement home, and I loved it. I learned so much about just communication because it's with Ning Lao. You know, you're serving old people. So I feel like every job that I've had, it's taught me something that they now make mastermind classes for, you know? So it at that job, it's really about communicating. How do you communicate with people who are resistance, you know, who are just mean? And how do you kind of like deal with what it makes you feel? Because 你一定老數要注重麼來記，要注重麼來哦and all that, right? So I think that's kind of taught me a lot of just like, okay, how do I deal with this feeling that I'm feeling when this person talks to me about three peas and two carrots on their plate, but there's a whole scoop,
Hmm.
right? And it's like you're causing an inconvenience because you really only want three peas and two carrots, but you know, you could just eat three peas and two carrots on your plate and just leave the rest, right? So it's like, how do you deal with those types of things? And you know, we had a really fun group working there where sometimes laughing it off and um, knowing what to expect is kind of funny, you know. So I kind of got through that, and then I think my first serious job where I felt like I could make a difference was when I got into retail management. Um, I felt like that's kind of where I learned how to be a leader, how to like what type of leader I am. I love developing people and giving people opportunities and working with people to kind of get them promoted to a manager themselves. And I felt like I did that very well when I worked in retail. And um, a lot of people love working with me because I was always so positive and you know, I love having fun with people and I want people to have fun when they come to work because who really wants to fold a freaking whole table full of t-shirts? You know? Like seriously. Some people take that job, some people have power trip um where you know they're like, well, I'm the manager so I'm not going to fold a t-shirt. No, I'm going to go and be like, let's race. Let's have some fun.
Hmm.
Let's fold. That's why I don't do laundry when I get home because I freaking hate it. Um but I do have tricks on like how to hang clothes faster and things like that, right? Where and I love teaching them too because to me it's like, why would I watch you fold a t-shirt and take 5 minutes when I can show you how to do it in 5 seconds, right? And so it was always about being more efficient, and I guess that's kind of why I'm in my profession now, because it was always about how do I get things better? How do I get things faster? Because then, you know, when I close, instead of being here till midnight, cleaning up the store and putting things back, we can just be here till 10:30. You
Mhm.
know, like I want to go home to my kids too. And so I feel like for me, that's kind of where I learned a lot of my leadership skills and what kind of leader I am. And I think that's kind of where I grew up as well with
Mhm.
other folks my age or younger. But yeah, I feel like that was really fun. And now I'm always like in serious conversations with executive leaders. It's not as fun anymore as
Mhm.
teaching someone how to fold a t-shirt or joking and like being creative too, right? Because in retail, you have to think about merchandising and placements of items and
Mhm.
telling a story with the clothes that you are asked to sell. And so, how do you then put pieces together where it tells a story of a certain girl, right? Like if you're a party girl versus like a girl who's like in this just in the city, but maybe they're not so much about clubbing and stuff, you know? So it's like
Mhm.
getting to be creative with those certain pieces. I mean, they give you guidance, but it's really you putting it together and you telling the story of what that may look like. Whereas now I feel like my work is very different, but it's also using um, the same thought process of developing that story and then pushing it out kind of way.
Yeah.
So again, it also helps with communication and targeting your audience as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like now is where working is boring,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be. I felt like I had the most fun when I was in retail management, and now I feel like my job pays me more, but I don't have the same joy as I did
Mhm.
when I worked in retail. But
Mhm.
my challenges and things that get me heartburn is also not the same thing because I feel like
Mhm.
it's at a higher level of like if I don't get this right, that it impacts the entire organization
Mhm.
versus before where it's like if I don't get this right, it's okay, my manager tomorrow will fix it kind of thing, you know, or we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very different for sure.
Yeah, and, you were kind of talking about how each job has kind of helped you with your next. I feel like that's the same thing with like transitions. It's like
Yeah.
even though the transitions have been hard, there's a lot of transferable skills in each thing that we go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the last one, the first baby.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
oh my goodness, y'all. That's such a shocker because it's not just
Yes.
an outward thing that happens, it's an inward thing that happens in our body. So you
Yes.
can talk about just, when yeah, just that whole process.
Yeah. So I think so for me, going mo mongke, I would say I'm very, very lucky that all my pregnancies have been super easy, but my first one, I would have to say was the easiest because I was young, um, skinnier, healthier. Um, so I felt like, you know, my first pregnancy was really healthy, it was good. I worked up until the day I gave birth, literally, it was crazy. But I think, you know, you're never ready until you're ready kind of thing, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I didn't know how to be a mom. I I was scared, you know, it's like, "Well, how do I know when the baby's hungry?" All these questions that you have, like, "How do I know when the baby's hungry?" Or when it's crying, what does it want? Like, these are things I think about, and, you know, people always love to give advice about being to first-time moms, and all of their advice is right? Because it's like, you'll just know. You'll just know when it happens, you'll know. And so I feel like for me, you know, all my kids, my mother-in-law is always the first one to "Mola dat day hoche."
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't mind it. I'm like, whatever, if you want to give them a bath, feel free to. But, you know, it's her teaching me.
Mhm.
I love that I have someone who cares enough to where "La yi jie de le yeah, li guan nu yi jie de lo gu ke gan zuo min yuo." She
Mhm.
never says that. I've never. But it's more so like, oh, I'm gonna give him a bath. And I think to me, it's like, oh, well, shit, I don't know how to do that, so I'm gonna go watch her. Or sometimes it's like, oh, I don't remember how to do it, so
Mhm.
I'm gonna go watch her. And so to me, it's like it's almost like her teaching me without saying she's teaching me kind of thing, which I love because again, it doesn't give me this expectation of like she wants me to go do all of these things, but it's more of like a I want to kind of
Mhm.
thing. And
Mhm.
so um, I think for me, like the being a first time mom was very scary because
Mhm.
you cheat so well, I mean you cheat so well, actually not right, but the instincts of a mother of just like, oh, baby's hungry, or oh, we need a change of diaper, or oh, this is what you do in order to like soothe them, or they're teething and this is what you need to do. So it's just a lot of like believing in yourself, which I think sometimes can be hard, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of moms who also have like postpartum depression because your body completely changes. Sex is not the same after having kids. That shit hurt because it's still healing. And so you just expect everything to go back to normal and it
Mhm.
doesn't. Some people have like a ton of stretch marks, like your body is just shifting. So it is a lot of inward things that you need to work on of just like, you're sleep deprived, your body completely destroyed for most people, most women. I hate those
Mhm.
women where like woman you bounce back. It makes me so jealous. But my body wasn't like that, like I cried over one stretch mark. I remembered I I was doing so good. There was no stretch marks, but it was in places I couldn't see.
Yes.
No, it was, like, under my belly, and then it started
Mhm.
making its way up, like, past my belly button, so now I can see it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, this is so painful for me. I did all of the and that's the thing, I beat myself up because, like, I did all the things people
Mhm.
said I was supposed to do, like, lotion it up with,
Mhm.
I forgot what that it's called, the white bottle with the mom and the baby on there. I forgot what it's
Mhm.
called, but cocoa butter.
Mhm.
I did all of that. I oiled my belly, but
No itching, right? Remember that
yeah,
was the other thing, don't itch. Yeah.
but it's that freaking one stretch mark still showed up. And so
Mhm.
I was really hard on myself because I didn't want any stretch marks. But the truth is bound to happen for
Yeah,
most women.
yeah.
And so, I think just having to be okay with that, but it is really hard because now you're not just like stressed about your own body and how you're feeling, but you have to worry about this tiny thing in front of you as well. And so, I think just really making sure that you have a partner who's going to like support you through everything. I
Mhm.
think, um, again, I was really lucky to where New was always like, if you're awake, then I'm awake. Because if you need something, then I'll help you, And so we were both sleep deprived because it
Mhm.
was both our baby, right? And
Mhm.
so um, I tried to, and another, I tried to breastfeed and I just couldn't.
Mhm.
And it was so painful for me. And so then you also have that guilt of, because people always talk about, oh, like breastfeeding has so much more nutrients and you should
Mhm.
always want to breastfeed. Well, fuck, I couldn't freaking breastfeed. My shit hurt.
Mhm. Yeah,
So then it's like it's then you start to feel guilty because then you're like, well, then is my baby getting enough nutrients, at
right.
least the healthy ones that he needs? And when you tell people that your baby's on formula, it's almost like you're embarrassed to tell people that because
Mhm.
then you're afraid of judgment too. So
Mhm.
there's just a whole bunch of like psychological things that are happening to you,
Yeah.
but you also have to figure out what you're going to do with this child of yours. And so I don't know, I think like for me there was just so much going on, but I loved it. I loved him. I loved being a mom. I loved cuddling. I loved just smelling him. I loved all of that, but there was so much internal stuff that was happening where you do think about those things and you start to
Mhm.
feel a certain way, but it's never, at least for me, it's never been to where I got to the point where I needed help. Because I think these are just things where you're constantly thinking about, and then also like, does my husband still find me attractive? I've gained some weight. Um, what are his expectations of me after this child? And so
Mhm.
these are all things, my crazy mind thinks about. And I'm sure other women, you guys out there,
Mhm.
you ladies are probably thinking the same thing too. But just having to deal with all of that and still loving yourself and caring
Mhm.
for your newborn and still developing and strengthening your relationship with your spouse, because now there's like a whole nother side of you that you have to um, try to cultivate for you, because you were
Mhm.
just a wife and a, daughter and a daughter-in-law and a friend and a sister and but now you're also a new mom. You're adding a new title and you got to figure that out. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff to learn. How about
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, I think the just, growing something inside of you, and that something dictates, how you'll be for the next 9 months. I think that was a lot of, just I didn't really like being pregnant. I think just the smell, the food, it was just like whatever I wanted to eat, I could never be satisfied, because I guess Mason
you?
wanted something else.
Hmm.
And so I think just that, and then you're changing body, and then your back hurting. And towards the end of my pregnancy, like I actually slept like sitting up on the couch because
Hmm.
I could never feel like I could just like opa, like I could
Oh,
never take a deep breath, right? So I always felt very claustrophobic, almost like if you can imagine, like if you're in a coffin, and you can't
yeah.
like it was that feeling. So that's why I don't really like being pregnant. I just know like that part's coming, and it's just like this, feeling of just never being able to breathe completely. And then still working, right? Like it's just like I think that I mean, I was so exhausted the first trimester. Like I would get home at 7 and chili mo booze, and I
Yeah.
hated that because it was just like then you can't really prepare for anything or even get a chance to relax, right? You're just sleeping all the time. And I mean, I think it's with the first baby, that's really nice. With the second baby, it's hard because the first kid still needs you.
Yeah.
But and then just that whole, I mean, yeah, like I remember getting up, like, or trying to get up after the you Mason, and then not being able to like pull myself up, like
Hmm.
right, you can just like
Yep.
pull out of bed and then realize you actually can't because your core is like completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And then I guess I also thought that my stomach would just go back, like the like because you're thinking the baby is so big, and
Yeah.
so when the baby comes out, then your stomach will go back, and then not
Yeah.
realizing it's been stretching for the past 9 months, and like it actually doesn't just go back. And so
Yeah.
I think those are just things that like, and during the time that I had Mason, I felt like blogging was really big, and I followed like a lot of mommy bloggers and
Yeah.
social media, and just how people make things look so good and so easy and stuff. And so
Hmm.
there's, also this like, I guess like expectations in my head of like how I was supposed to still look afterwards and how, handling that transition and stuff like that. And so I think those were again just like standards that, based on what I saw, I kind of put on myself. But knowing, like being a little bit more like easing up on that, and just, like knowing that everything would just take slower, right? And like when you go anywhere, you got to pack the diaper bags, and
Yeah.
it's like a 20-minute process. And then by the time you do pack everything, like, and so
Yeah.
then you gotta like, you gotta
Take
go.
the diaper bag out, change the diaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because I always felt bad for like always like feeling like, oh my gosh, we're always late, because by the time and then or the baby is like crying, freaking out in the
Yeah.
car and stuff like that. And so um I think, yeah, I mean, that was just a big adjustment. And then your relationship with with your husband, knowing that it is always it's going to be different from now on, right? Because it's not
Yes.
just the two of you guys. Now it's like, like you don't always have time for each other because you're, trying to deal with the kids and their needs and stuff like that. And that becomes last. So I would say, like, to find some kind of way that you can still have that connection and that bond with your, spouse,
Hmm.
which is again really hard with kids and being sleep deprived, and shifts and schedules and stuff like that. But really trying to figure that out.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because like the part where you expect your stomach to go back to what it was before.
Yeah.
And honestly, I remembered Hyoyeogutu, I don't know if it's my first or second where news like because like you have this big gigantic one piece cover up on so
Mhm.
you don't really see your stomach, right?
Yeah.
And they tell you to like they have a spray bottle for you to like spray down there and clean it and stuff,
Mhm.
and you shower. I mean, you don't have to shower, but I did bring clothes to shower because I didn't want to go home all nasty and
Yeah.
stuff. And so then I walk out, and New's like, I don't know if you remember him saying this to me, but he was like, "Oh, you still look pregnant." Because my stomach is like stretched and it's still like it takes
Yeah.
time for it to shrink. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I just freaking had the baby like a couple hours ago. Like
Right,
my
right.
stomach's not gonna like go back to
Right.
what it was. I just thought it was so funny, and I don't remember if I was like offended or,
Mhm.
I think it was just like a stuff. I was like, well, that was stupid,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and you just kind of move on. I laugh about it now, but I'm sure at the moment I was probably a little hurt,
Right.
um, of just like the expectation of like,
Yes.
and I think that's why sometimes as women we put a lot of pressure on ourselves on how we look because
Yeah,
we want to make sure that our spouse still finds us beautiful, and so for
yeah,
those men, advice to you, don't be saying those types of things
yes.
to your partner after they just pushed out a baby for you. So
Yeah,
just be mindful of those things because as women we are very like conscious and almost like we lose our confidence a little bit
yeah,
afterwards. It takes us a
yeah.
while to gain it back. So
Yeah, and just never ask women if, they're pregnant. Like, that's
yeah.
not a compliment to be like, "Are you pregnant?" Like,
Mm. Yeah.
'cause I've been asked that, I'm like, "No, I'm not."
Oh my gosh. So kapwa ko, when I was still doing life insurance and I was pregnant
Uh-huh.
and um it was like 2 months after I think maybe 2 months after and I went back and I started doing life insurance again, right? And the lady who had saw me before when I was pregnant was like, "Oh, when are you due?" I'm like, "I just
Yeah.
fucking gave birth 2 months ago."
Yeah, yeah.
So again, women, we do it to each other too.
Yeah,
Of just like, just don't ask, unless they tell you,
yeah,
don't say anything
yeah,
because people are trying to build up their confidence. You're gonna go crushing it down by asking
yeah,
if they're pregnant or not.
yes, yes,
So
agree.
just be
And
mindful.
Sophia said binding. Yes, yeah, it did help me a lot. I did bind like both times at my kids' 9th grade. That does help
Yeah, yeah.
a lot.
Okay, so Kelly, I want to ask you one last thing. You are going through a big change right now
Mhm.
too. And so for those of you who don't know, Kelly's moving. She's been sharing her journey of selling her house and what her new apartment looks like on our page. And so how are you feeling right now? Today is the last day that you are doing a show in your house. And I know your home has been so special to both you and me. We
Mhm.
started the show in your kitchen. We
Yes.
did our shows in different parts of your house.
Yes.
So it's special for me as well. So, what emotions are you going through and how are you feeling?
It is, like my house is honestly like always feels like a big hug for me. I remember, um, like when Ka, like I remember Ka coming over when I didn't have no blinds, no nothing in my back, like nothing, right? I would
Yeah.
leave them all open and it'd be like 8 o'clock at night and I'd be just acting like nobody was looking in. It's because I felt really safe in my house, like I have always felt very safe, to be alone, when the kids aren't with me, always very safe. And so it is scary to feel like this has been kind of like a security blanket for me. And now I'm kind of letting it go and kind of jumping. And I don't really know where things are going to take me, but I think just being open minded and also knowing that like, I've gone through other transitions and, like I survived and that this would just be like one of those transitions again and I'll find my footing and I'll be okay, and so I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of been the reminder for me as I start to like, see either throw stuff away and start to like, move some stuff over to the apartment. It's just recognizing that like, transitions are hard, but then, it's also a chance for me to grow because I could literally be in this house for the rest of my life and work in Salem for the rest of my life and do, like
Mhm.
us have our show for the rest of our lives. But I feel like, without like new transitions and changes, then we also don't grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Any advice that you would give to our viewers on just or tips on how to deal with transitions?
I would say my top one is just establishing like a new routine. I feel like that has worked for me. I mean, I'm pretty structure. I think the structure helps me to deal with all the, moving parts that I can't control. And so I think just figuring out, what that new pattern is going to look like, even when I think about, having the baby. And then it was just like, okay, like what time do I need to pick up the baby? What are all the things I need to do? And then that way I can work around like all the stuff I don't have to worry about. And so I think for me, it's just getting a good routine in, and then also being nice to yourself and knowing like because it's a new experience, so your new normal is going to be completely new and that's not going to look like anything, and so I think letting go, which is also very hard for me to do sometimes, it's just like knowing that I need to be easy on myself.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I think along that line, like, adaptability, I think it's really important that we continue to focus on what we can control.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is how we react to things. And so, I think transitions and change, it's hard for everybody, regardless of how much training you have and what you think you're really good at. There's some resistance there in a sense where you kind of have to reflect and think, ooh, I'm being resistant to this change or to this transition, but why is that? And a lot of that is fear. Fear
Yeah.
just fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And I think what has helped me transition a lot and the things that I've gone through is just look at the positive side of change, right? Kind of like what you were alluding to is if there's no challenge, then there's no growth. If there's no change, there's no growth. And so
Mhm.
I think what we've mentioned before is it's a stepping stone for you in your life, and however you want to see that, it's within your control.
Mhm.
And so for me, anytime I still struggle with change. It's not to say we're
Mhm.
perfect, but there are decisions sometimes where I'm like, oh, do I want to do this? And you're constantly weighing out the pros and cons. But sometimes there are things where you're just like, I'm just going to go for it and I'll
Yeah.
figure it out on the way. Um, and when it gets tough, always remember why you decided to go this way, right? Because something really pushed you to go right instead of to go straight,
Right.
or to go left, right? And so
Yeah.
kind of thinking back to why you're deciding to go right. But yeah, adaptability. And I mean, you've said it all already. It's really just be kind to yourself and give yourself some grace because we're not perfect. And there's lots of lessons learned in life and in decisions that we make and everything that we do. So just be kind to yourself and be kind to those around you. Um, and just adapt to whatever it is that you are changing towards.
Yeah, yeah, definitely know that you're not alone. Even sometimes I think we look at other people and we feel like, oh, like, they got their crap together. But most of us are dealing with, like responding to and dealing with a lot of stuff. And we're all just, nobody has,
Nobody has their shit together.
right,
I
right,
feel
right. We're all just
yeah.
doing
There's
a little
always problems.
mess.
Well, and social media, like you people only put out what
Hmm.
people want that
Yeah.
other people to see, right? And I think that's why it's so important for us to have these like vulnerable conversations about
Yeah.
our experiences because it's saying, hey, we're not perfect.
Mhm.
There are things that happen and we only post pictures and selfies that are altered by filters,
Yeah.
right? And so it's not, when we do these live shows, like you get to see us, you get to see our faces, you get to hear our voice, you get to know the real us. And so I think it's important to always show up as yourself and be
Yeah.
okay with that too, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Agree. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being with us today. Clearly, we can again just a
Talk
few
for
months we can
hours.
talk for yeah. And so, thanks for being here with us talking about transitions. I think that it's one that we continuously need to talk and be real about, and just know that everybody again is going through their own life transitions and supporting one another and being there for each other, and then also being there for yourself and being easy in yourself yourself. So
Yeah.
please remember that. Reach out if you have any questions, comments, or need some additional support. I know we're it may feel like we're a show and not, individuals, but we are two individuals. And so definitely let us know if there's anything that you need assistance with. I'm sure that you guys have your networks and communities. And I think a lot of organizations are talking more about mental health and, life changes and things like that as well. And so again, thank you for being here with us. We believe that conversations drive change and change starts with you. We'll see you next time.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.